How bad do you think this problem is?
Well, clearly it is a very significant and a very severe problem, and it's important to understand, and it's not news that obviously we've had the COVID crisis, so the NHS had to prioritise urgent care, and it's slowly beginning to recover, and although we're tackling the waiting list, obviously demand has gone up, but in terms of what we need to tackle it, I think it's a multi-pronged approach. So one element of it is money, but there's already a lot of money invested in the NHS. The big issue is going to be capacity, enough operating theatres, enough consultants, enough doctors, and so on. So money itself is not the answer. But the big thing that's changed is the way we work. So what we've got is that elective centres that, for example, just do hip and knee operations, and the productivity has rocketed up. So those patients that are waiting, say, over a year went down by a third in March. So a lot of those sort of efforts will make a big difference in terms of sort of getting through the waiting list. But the other priorities is a lot of urgent work needing to doing. So that has to be prioritised as well. So I agree, it's not something we can tackle overnight, but there's a huge effort being made in the NHS to really tackle this area, because we know what it means to patients.
Yeah, I mean, look, money clearly of itself isn't enough. But I'm very struck, Ken, by one thing, that, as the lockdown started at the end of March last year, and we were very worried, everybody was scared about what might happen, we saw one or two quite dramatic things happen. The first was the opening up of the Nightingale hospitals, which in short order, now I don't know in terms of medical equipment what they had, but they certainly had bed capacity. That we managed to do. Then there was a big shout out for retired doctors, nurses and surgeons to come back to the NHS colours, and from what I could understand, huge numbers of people said that they wanted to help. Then we heard, actually, the whole process of retired doctors coming back into the system was so mired in red tape that very few actually made it. And then we saw the Nightingale hospitals, which had been built in short order, which impressed us all, basically being mothballed or being closed completely. And I want to ask you, that thinking that we had back last April 2020, is there anything to be said, given the sheer size of this backlog, is there anything to be said for trying to cajole former doctors, former nurses, former surgeons back into active service?
Well, I totally agree that everything we can do to increase and attract the workforce, particularly the experienced workforce, is going to be a good thing. So whether it's doctors, nurses, other professionals, then we should encourage that, because that's definitely going to help. I think in terms of the sites we use, a lot of hospitals...
Just my quick question on that. I mean, you agree with me that it sounds like a very good idea. I did speak to people who'd volunteered to go back last year, who just said, forget it. They want us to fill in forms and the whole thing's impossible. But if you and I agree that it's a good idea to get people back, why is it not being done?
So we did learn a lot from that, and I think that admittedly there was quite a bit of bureaucracy in terms of as you say, filling in 10 forms and so on. But I think we've learned from that, and I think that we can definitely streamline the process. So there's no reason we can't get over the bureaucracy, but certainly we don't want to be trapped. So anyone who essentially wants to work, we should attract them back in and fit them in. And I'm sure they can make a significant contribution, as well as all the other mechanisms that we use, upskilling and so on, that will also make a difference.
Yeah. OK, and what about the Nightingales? As I say, these hospitals were able to provide many thousands of beds. Could they be useful, whether it's for minor operations or post-operative care? Could they play a useful role in us trying in some way to get down this, I think it's 5.5 million now, backlog in operations?
I think it's worth thinking along those ways, but the critical thing with the Nightingale, it actually competes for the same staff. So what we found, and from our local experience, is that we've got elective centres, or if you like, extensions or increasing operating theatres within existing hospitals. They can provide the capacity. We've just got to make sure that the rest of the infrastructure supports that. The other thing is something like the Nightingale may risk actually centralising everything, and a lot of people will want their operation done locally, so that can work in that way. But there's no reason in terms of where we can scale up that capacity, maybe different centres. So now what we have is orthopaedic centres or eye centres, which can do thousands of operations. And that probably is the right approach to sort of take, because, yes, it's industrialising it, but the expertise is concentrating. And I can definitely see that happening rather than one big bang. Maybe you'd have, sort of 4 or 5 around, say, an area like London and across the country, maybe regionally, will make a difference.
So you think we can make a difference to this backlog of operations and not head towards this horrifying potential figure of 13 million?
I think we can definitely make the difference. I think it does test the health service and what it can do. But I think, the health service has always, risen to the challenge. What we've got to look after is the patients who are very urgent. I mean, cancer, unmet need, and sort of so on. So there is a bit of catching up. And to be honest, I think we do have to be realistic that, OK, it's not done overnight. It's not done in 1 year. But actually, I think we can make a huge amount of progress. And then I think if we see the numbers heading in the right direction, then we've actually made a difference. I mean, we're fortunate we have this sort of NHS, but I think if we work that differently, I'm optimistic, and I think we have to be.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows, and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.